Okay, this is the three move repertoire from the black side. I already did the same thing for white in an earlier video. The idea is we're trying to build up an opening repertoire that'll let you play the first three moves confidently. Uh, Black is probably even more important to be solid on your openings than with white because it's a little easier to get in trouble, a little less room for error. So you really want to be confident in what you're doing as black. Our general principles are going to be the same as with white, though. Control the center, bring out the pieces, and castle quickly. So we'll look at two white moves that will respond to e4, d4. Those are by far the most common. So let's start with e4. Recommend e5, just occupying the center, getting ready to bring out the kingside pieces quickly. White's most common move is knight f3, hitting our pawn. We can respond to this with knight c6, developing the knight and also protecting the pawn. Same deal as in the white repertoire. It's usually a good idea to bring out a piece and do something else, like attack or defend something at the same time. Now white has two main moves, bringing out the bishop to either c4 or b5, so we should be ready for both of those. Let's look at c4 first. This can be tricky to deal with because white's starting to put pressure on this f7 square, which is the weakest square in the starting position, only defended by the king. Black has two main choices here, knight f6 or bishop c5. These are both fine. I'm going to recommend bishop c5 because I think it's a little bit simpler. So just to show knight f6, which is actually not the recommendation, but just showing the logic here. If we go knight f6, then white can go knight g5, creating a threat on f7, which is actually not at all obvious how we should deal with that. It turns out black can play d5 here. That's the best move, and this is okay for black, but play becomes very sharp, and I think the easier solution is to just go bishop c5. And the reason we go bishop c5 first is to allow our queen to control g5 for one more move, which means that when we do play knight f6, we'll be ready to castle immediately. So white can do a lot of things here. This is already move 3, by the way, so this is the repertoire. Guest appearance by Ramses. Right, let's say white castles. Now we could go knight f6, and if knight g5, that's no longer a problem whatsoever because just rook f7, and the rook defends the pawn. So bishop c5 is the move I'm recommending here. Knight f6 and castle are likely going to be how we follow that up. Okay, what about bishop b5, which introduces the Roy Lopez? So here I would recommend just immediately kicking that bishop with a6. This move might look surprising because, well, didn't white just move his bishop here because he wants to take our knight, so why are we forcing him to do that? But actually, taking immediately for white is not really too dangerous here. We can just recapture, and if white tries to grab our pawn now, black has a good move to get the pawn back. Just go queen d4 with a double attack on the knight and pawn. The knight will be forced to move away, and then we regain the pawn with a nice position. So usually white retreats, and the reason we insert a6 now is to get the option of playing b5. Not right now, but maybe in a few moves or at an appropriate moment. And then here I would follow up with knight f6, and our next few moves are likely going to be bishop e7 and castles. At some moment we can play b5 if we want to deny white the option of taking our knight. Okay, I think that mostly covers e4. So let's look as well at d4. Similar to against e4, I'd like to just occupy the center with a pawn right away. And white has a few options now. Probably the most popular is c4, which is the Queen's Gambit, like the TV show. It's a gambit because white's sort of sacrificing a pawn. You can take that. That's a perfectly fine move, but I prefer to just keep this really solid point in the center supported by going e6. So we're keeping a nice foothold in the center and getting ready to bring out the bishop along with the knight and castle quickly, in line with our philosophy in the opening. So white can play knight c3, and we can go knight f6. And here again, we're looking to play bishop e7, castle quickly. This is a really solid setup for black. We bring out some pieces, get control of the center, and get our king to safety. So, basically do all the major things we want to do in the opening. It's really hard for white to disrupt this. It is good to be a little bit aware of the middle game plan. So the way we need to get these pieces out. Usually, this knight is actually not so well placed on c6 here, because we want our c pawn to be able to go to c5. So usually we'll go bishop e7 castles. The knight can go to d7, often b6, bishop b7, and then finally c5 to free our position. That's just sort of a rough sketch. Of course, you also have to pay attention to what your opponent's doing. White could also play knight f3 here, but we can respond the same way: knight f6, bishop e7, castle. What else is there? The London is quite popular. Knight f6 is a good move here too. And again, e6. Against the London, I would change the plan slightly and look to move the bishop to d6, immediately challenging white's bishop. But similar, we're still looking at castle quickly, still looking to go for the c5 pawn break at some point. That covers the major options for white in d4. Also, knight f3 is very common, but this is most likely going to transpose to something we've already looked at, meaning it'll just get to the same position by a different move order. So we can play knight f6, and now likely white will go back into either a queen's gambit or a London. So if c4, e6, and we're back in familiar territory, or bishop f4, e6, and again, this is similar to what we already looked at. So okay, that's a 3-move repertoire for black against e4 and d4. Hopefully that helps you get a solid position and get a good start in the game, and getting ready to play a solid game.